The push came so sudden that the world turned into air and gravel. My son's hand had been the last thing I felt before the weightless drop. Wind tore at my ears, my chest seized, and the sound of my own scream got lost in the open sky. When we hit the slope below, it was not silence but pain that filled me. Sharp rocks cut my side, dust clogged my throat, and all I could hear was my husband's breath rasping beside me. His face bent close, lips broken and bloody, whispering in a voice I could barely catch. "Pretend we're dead." I froze, my heart refusing to obey, but my body lay still against the dirt. Above us, the cliff edge looked too far, too cruel. The air still carried the echo of boots scuffing the ground. For a moment I thought I saw him, our son, standing in the sunlight like nothing had happened. My chest ached worse than the fall. My own blood could have been replaced with ice, and still it wouldn't have felt this cold. Time split. One part of me stayed down there on the ground, broken and terrified, while another part was dragged back to last night's dinner table. The smell of garlic bread, my son's easy smile, the sound of his laugh bouncing off the kitchen walls. He had leaned close to tell me something small about his work, his voice soft like it used to be when he was a boy. His hands had carried no weight of betrayal then, only the shape of forks and plates. I had trusted that smile. I had trusted the child I carried through fevers, through broken toys, through sleepless nights. Back in the dirt, that memory mocked me. I wanted to ask my husband if he still believed in the boy who pushed us, but his whisper sat inside me like a stone. Pretend. Pretend to be gone. Pretend we are not alive enough to speak. My throat burned with the need to shout, but fear smothered it. If our son looked back and saw us move, what then? The sky above was clear, so terribly beautiful, while my chest rose in shallow gasps. I remembered his birth cry, so full, so fierce, and now I remembered his laugh, the one from last night, and how small it sounded when the cliff took it from him. Would you like me to keep expanding this into the full 875 words Part 1 draft, ready-to-use story text, or just give you scene-by-scene breakdowns in this easy English style that you can build on yourself? The climb back up felt like a dream I was not part of. My arms shook when I tried to push myself upright. My knees scraped raw against rock. My husband leaned on me, his shoulder heavy, his eyes clouded with both pain and fear. We moved in silence, crawling, dragging, pausing for air that burned our lungs. Each step made the world blur, but something stronger than the ache kept me going. An invisible thread pulling me to the top, away from the ground where we had lain still like corpses. When we finally reached the road, voices came rushing toward us. Tires screeched, doors slammed. A hiker had seen movement and called for help. Flashing lights painted the trees red and blue. The police gathered around us, their radios buzzing. And there he was, our son. His face wore the shape of shock. His voice cracked. "Mom? Dad? What happened?" The words should have been comfort, but they slid through me like cold water. His hands shook as he reached forward. But when his eyes met mine, something empty flickered there. At the hospital, bright lights and sharp smells closed in. Nurses checked my ribs, pressed against bruises I didn't know I had. A doctor whispered about concussion, about observation. My husband lay in the next bed, answering questions in a low voice. They asked how we fell, and my mouth froze. I wanted to say everything, the shove, the whisper, the betrayal, but my husband's eyes caught mine, warning, begging. "It was an accident," he said before I could speak. "Loose gravel." His words floated in the room like smoke, but clues clung to us like dust. My arm bore the mark of a grip, fingers pressed deep into skin. The bruises on my back were not from slipping, but from being forced. I saw the nurse notice, her brow furrowing, but she said nothing, only noted it down. Inside me, two voices fought. One screamed to stand up, to point at my son and tell the world what he did. The other whispered of ruin, his future, his name, the stain it would leave forever. My husband leaned toward me when the room was quiet and said, "We can't ruin him. We can't." His voice trembled, not with love, but with fear of what truth would cost. When they wheeled me out for scans, I saw it. On the fold of my husband's blanket, a small object had fallen, a silver button, scratched along the edge. My fingers closed around it before anyone noticed. I remembered the jacket our son wore that morning, navy blue with silver buttons shining. The sight of it pressed a weight on my chest, heavier than the rocks had been. Back in the room, I held the button in my palm and stared at it until my vision blurred. It was proof, small but undeniable, that he had been at the edge, close enough to leave part of himself behind. My husband would not look at it. He turned away, muttering about rest, about healing. But I knew. This was not clumsy feet or bad luck. Someone had tried to silence us. Someone we raised, someone we loved. And though my body ached and my voice shook, the truth cut through every shadow. Our fall was not an accident. It was a warning. Do you want me to continue this same easy English story draft style for part 3 as well? Or should I pause here so you can adjust details first? I used to think families break with noise. Plates thrown, doors slammed, words shouted so loud the neighbors hear. Ours did not break like that. Ours cracked along quiet lines, thin and hard to see, until one day the ground gave way. It began with money, though I wish it hadn't. When my mother died, she left me a small inheritance that I never touched. It sat in a separate account, quiet as rain in a barrel. I planned to pass it to our children in pieces. Emergency help, a first home, a safety net. My husband knew about it. Our son knew there was something, and that was enough to make him feel owed. He asked first at 17. "So, is there a college fund for me?" he said, trying to sound casual. I told him yes. There was help for tuition if he kept his grades steady and stayed out of trouble. His mouth tightened. He wanted a car, not books. When we did not buy the car, he called me stingy. When we paid his first semester, he posted photos of sneakers that cost more than a week of food. By sophomore year, he was already skipping classes. He said college was a scam and he could learn everything online. He wanted money to start something big with friends. Some app, some clothing brand. The idea changed every week. We said no to the big checks, but offered rent and food if he stayed in school. He called it control. Then came the first favor. He had parked wrong outside a club and got a ticket plus something worse, a complaint about disorderly conduct. He asked his father to make it go away with a phone call to someone he knew from work. My husband used a favor, and the complaint disappeared. Our son learned something in that moment, and it was not gratitude. At a family birthday party, many months later, he made a show. He arrived late, wearing a new jacket with silver buttons that caught the lights. He hugged me too hard, then held out his hand to my sister's husband and joked, "You still driving that dinosaur?" Laughter followed him around the room like a tail. I saw a flash in his eyes when someone asked about school. He changed the subject to money and ideas and investors, a word he loved. "I just need a small launch," he said, glancing at me. "Family helps family, right?" I swallowed and smiled and said we could talk later. He smiled too, but his eyes went flat, as if a window had closed behind them. Later that night, he cornered me near the kitchen. Music thumped behind us. "I need 10,000, he said like he was ordering food. "Not a loan, an investment. I'll double it." When I told him no, that we could discuss a smaller amount if he presented a plan, he laughed in my face. "A plan for my own mother? You don't trust me at all." He turned to leave, then came back and whispered in my ear, "You owe me." The words felt like hands on my throat. Around that time, he began visiting. A man who owned half the new buildings on the west side of town, a developer who moved through ribbon cuttings and charity dinners like a king. The man liked my son's charm. He invited him to help with small errands. My husband told him, "Keep your distance. That man's money is not clean," but our son loved the shine of it. He wanted to be seen with power. He posted photos with gold-lit bars and glossy cars that weren't his, always tagged in places where the bill arrives in a leather book. I learned about the first debt because a woman called the house when he didn't pick up. Her voice was low and smooth, no anger in it, only a tired kind of certainty. "He owes," she said. "Tell him we remember." I hung up shaking. When I told my husband, he pressed his fingers to his temples and said, "I'll talk to him." He did, and our son laughed and hugged him and said it was just a misunderstanding. It wasn't. More calls came than none at all, which was worse. The secret we kept arrived one rainy night. Our son came home past midnight with the smell of fear on him, sharp and metallic. He brought mud into the kitchen. His jacket, The navy one with the silver buttons was torn. There was a thin cut along his cheek. He opened the fridge and drank milk from the carton, then leaned on the counter like his legs would not hold him. I asked what happened. He said nothing. I asked again. He said, "Drop it." My husband asked a third time, and something inside him gave way. He said he had borrowed money from the wrong person to flip something fast, and now the math didn't work. He said if a shipment went missing, it would look like his fault. He said words that did not belong to the boy I had raised. Roots, drops, burner phone. My stomach dropped with them. My husband's face went gray. He told him to sit. He told him we would help him talk to the police, that this was the line, that if he had touched anything illegal, we could not hide it. Our son slammed his hand on the table so hard the salt shaker fell. "You'd send me to prison," he hissed. "You'd ruin me." He turned to me, eyes wet. "Mom, tell him. Tell him we keep this in the family." The rain beat the windows. I felt like the house was shrinking. My husband did not shout. He spoke in a voice I had heard only once when his father died. "If you hurt people, if you traffic anything that hurts people, I will turn you in myself," he said. "We raised you to know right. This ends now." Our son stared at him with something like wonder, then hate. It was a cold hour. We did not go to the police that night. We took his phone. We made him call the man and say he wanted out. The man's laugh came through the speaker, empty and mean. "No one gets out," he said. We changed the locks the next day. We watched the street. We thought we had chosen the safe path, the patient path. We told ourselves that if we managed it quietly, if we kept our son close and busy, it would pass. We told ourselves that if we kept paying the smallest fires, no bigger flames would start. We were wrong. The humiliation at the charity gala came just a week later. The developer put a hand on my son's shoulder for a photo, then made a joke into the microphone about young people who can't hold their liquor or their debts. Laughter rolled over my son like surf. He smiled too hard, the kind of smile that has no air in it. When we reached him, he pulled away. "Don't touch me," he said to his father, too soft for others to hear. "You chose the wrong side." I wanted to take his face in my hands, to say there was no side, only the truth and a way back. But he had already turned toward the exit with a girl whose eyes were full of smoke. The last fight before the cliff was about the inheritance. He wanted the rest of it now, to clear what he called a business snag. We said no. He said then he would go to the developer for a bridge, and my husband said, "If you sign anything with that man, I go to the police." Our son laughed without joy. "You won't," he said. "You love how people look at you in this town." But my husband meant it. After our son stormed out, he showed me a draft of an email he had written to a detective he trusted, short and plain, asking for a meeting about a family matter that might involve the developer, cash movement, and possible harm. He had not sent it yet. "Tomorrow," he said. "Tomorrow morning." He went to bed with the phone on his nightstand, and the word tomorrow sitting on the pillow between us like a guest. Now, in the hospital light, those nights lined up in my head like stones. The old favors, the growing debts, the developer's hand, the girl with smoke eyes, the rain, the burner phone, the almost sent email, my husband whispering at the cliff. Pretend we're dead. As if some part of him knew that the truth we were about to tell had reached the wrong ears already. As if the act of being alive, of speaking, was a danger. I took the silver button from my pocket and felt its ridges. The nurse thought I was praying. Maybe I was, not for mercy but for clarity. I understood at last that our son had not just been reckless. He had been pressed by debt, by pride, by men who liked boys who needed them, pressed by the fear that we would choose the law over him. I wanted to believe he had panicked up there at the cliff, that he had only wanted to scare us, that a gust of wind had done the rest. But the bruise on my arm had the shape of fingers. The button had the shape of a choice. My husband had almost chosen the police. Our son had chosen silence. I closed my hand around the metal and made my own choice. I would find out everything. I would follow every small trail, every text, every name said in a whisper. I would sit with the detective my husband almost called. I would stand in whatever rooms I needed to stand in. I would keep my voice steady even if my heart shook. I would learn why my son believed that the only way to keep his life was to take ours. And when I knew the why, I would decide what kind of mother I had to be. I started with the places that still smelled like him. The kitchen stool he always pulled out too far. The hook by the door where his navy jacket had hung. I took a notebook, wrote times and names, and then I put on shoes with real treads. If the truth was hiding in small corners, I would bend down and look. I went back to the cliff in the morning, alone. The air was bright and clean. The slope below looked smaller from above, and that frightened me somehow. I stood at the edge and scanned the ground the way a mother scans a messy floor. Eyes slow, careful, trained by years of finding the thing that hurts when you step on it. A ranger had placed yellow flags near spots with scuffs or prints. I crouched and noticed something the report later would not mention. There were 2 distinct boot treads near the lip, not one. One matched my husband's boots, square and worn. The other had a sharp triangular pattern I had never seen on any of our shoes. There was also a clean scrape along a flat rock, like metal had dragged across it. I took photos. I followed the prints back to the path, and that was when a voice called my name. It was Mrs. Calloway from 3 houses up, the neighbor who always waved from behind a line of flowers. She had binoculars around her neck and a bird book in her bag. "I thought I saw you," she said, breathless. "I'm so sorry about everything." She hesitated, then added, "I come out here most mornings to watch hawks. I saw a car the day it happened. It looked like your son's, and right behind it, there was a black SUV with no plates on the front. They didn't park at the trailhead. They parked where the cameras don't reach, down by the service road. Are you sure?" I asked. My voice sounded far away. She nodded. "I keep notes for birds. I time my sightings. The cars were there at 6:18 p.m. I wrote it down because the noise scared the hawk. I can show you." She opened her notebook. There it was, neat as a grocery list. 6:18, 2 cars, gray coupe plus black SUV, hawk spooked. I thanked her and walked back to my car with my heart thudding. On the way, I stopped by the small gas station near the trail. It had 2 cameras pointed at the lot and the road. The clerk was young and kind, with a face that still had room for surprise. "We need to see footage from the evening of the fall," I said. "It's for us, for family." I placed the button on the counter without thinking, as if proof could be a coin. He didn't ask questions. He pulled up a screen and let me scroll. At 6:12 p.m., a gray coupe like my son's drove by. At 6:14, a black SUV followed, slow, like it was counting breaths. You could not read the back plate, but the shape was distinct. Boxy, heavy, new. I saved the clips on a small drive the clerk handed me for $5. I thanked him and stood in the parking lot until I could breathe again. Then I went home and opened our family cell phone account on my laptop, the one we had never bothered to split, because it was easier to share a bill. My hands shook as I typed the password. The call log came up. At 6:23 p.m., my son had called a number saved as M. Buldars, foreman, a contact I had never seen. 3 minutes. At 6:27, there was a call to 911. My chest went cold. When I clicked MBLDR's foreman, the full number showed. I searched it online and found a scrap of a listing. Maverick Builders, a subsidiary of the developer's company, the man with the golden scissors at every ribbon cutting. The police report arrived that afternoon by email, as bland as oatmeal. It said we slipped on loose gravel. It said a hiker found us within minutes. It said no evidence of foul play was observed. I read it twice, then looked at the timestamp on the body cam stills attached at the end. The first officer reached the trail at 7:18 p.m. The first photo of us is stamped 7:31. If the SUV and my son had been there around 6:18, and if 911 was called at 6:27, why did the first photo read 7:31? That was more than within minutes. That was almost an hour. And the stills showed something else. In the dust near the lip, 2 different boot patterns were faint but present. The report did not mention them. I took a breath and called the detective my husband had almost emailed. Detective Mara Hale listened without interrupting. Her voice was firm but gentle, like a bridge that holds. "I read the initial," she said. "It came in as an accident. If you are telling me there were calls before the 911 call, and cars that don't show up on the traffic cameras, that matters. I can't promise a miracle, but I can look. Quietly." "Quietly," I said, tasting the word. "We need quiet. Come tomorrow," she said. "Bring whatever you have." That night I sat with my husband at the table where we had once eaten garlic bread and told jokes. I put the drive, the printed call log, the button, and the report side by side like cards. He looked tired. More tired than pain alone could explain. "Why did you whisper that?" I asked. "Pretend we're dead. Why would you say that unless you thought someone would check?" He rubbed his eyes. "Because I was afraid," he said. "Afraid of our son, yes, but also afraid of the men around him. I need to tell you something I should have told you a year ago." He told me about a night when our son had binged and driven. Not far, not fast, but fast enough to clip a parked car and keep going. Someone saw. A woman called him, not me. Our son had given her his father's number for emergencies. She said she didn't want trouble. She just wanted the damage paid. Our son begged. "Please fix it," he said. "I'll do better." My husband met the woman, paid cash, fixed the car through a friend, and told no one. "I didn't want to put a mark on him," he said. "I didn't want to start a file." "You covered it," I said, and it wasn't a question. "I did." "I thought I was buying time," he said, but I taught him I would hide things. When I wrote that email to Hale and didn't send it, he saw me drafting it. He didn't say a word. He just watched. Hours later, I got a text from a number I didn't know. "If you report, they will make it look like you fell." I deleted it. I told myself it was a bluff. And then, he looked at his hands. And then we went to the cliff. We sat with that. The room felt small again. I wanted to be angry enough to throw a plate. But what I felt was older than anger. It was grief for the ways we had loved badly in the name of love. In the morning, I took everything to Detective Hale. Her office was a box full of maps and dust motes. She watched the gas station footage twice. She photographed the button with careful hands. She took the call log and said, "We can subpoena the carrier if this becomes formal. For now, this helps me ask questions." "What about the report?" I said. "The time gaps. The 2 boot prints," she nodded. "I see them. The initial patrol sometimes writes fast. They clean it up later. I'll talk to the ranger. I'll also ask for trail camera pulls and traffic cams on the road into the park. We have blind spots, but not as many as people think." By afternoon, she called me back in. 2 things, she said. 1, the ranger who flagged the site found hardware near the edge that didn't belong to the park, an anchor pin and a carabiner. They bagged it because of the scrape in the rock. It looked like someone had used it to tie off, maybe to pull something heavy, or to stage a position at the edge. 2, that black SUV. Traffic cam caught it in town earlier that day, registered to a shell that pays for 3 vehicles under the developer's company. I felt my knees go soft. "The anchor," I said. "Why would there be climbing hardware?" "People do dumb things near edges," she said. But this wasn't standard climbing gear. It was construction-grade steel, the kind used to secure temporary lines. The fibers on it, she held up a photo. They're from a rope we've seen at the developer's site. We can't prove chain of custody yet, but it's a pattern. The carabiner? I asked. Her face changed. We dusted it. 2 partial prints. One belongs to your son. The other is smudged. The outside of the carabiner has his touch. The inside has trace from someone wearing gloves. That tells me 2 people handled the same piece in different ways. Your son touched it bare. Someone else set it with care. I pictured my boy's hands, the way he flicked a lighter, the way he twirled keys, careless, charming. I also pictured a stranger's gloved hands doing work at the edge of a cliff, quiet and patient. "Why would they need an anchor?" I whispered. "To stand safe and lean out," she said. "Or to hold a line taut, or to fake a fall, or to pull something back up. Many reasons. None good for you." On the way home, I drove past the developer's newest site. A banner fluttered, luxury, view, future. Men in hard hats moved like chess pieces. A black SUV sat near the gate, sun winking on its mirror. I parked 1 block away and watched. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging. Family first. The words crawled under my skin. I went to Mrs. Calloway's house with a paper bag of muffins as an excuse. "Do you have other notes?" I asked. She smiled sadly and handed me her bird log. There were more small details than I had hoped for. Not just the 6:18 entry, but a note at 7:05. SUV left, fast. If the police first photo was 7:31, then whoever was with my son had left long before help arrived. That night, I laid everything on the table again. My husband stared at the photo of the carabiner as if it could blink first. He touched it, he whispered. He touched it, but he didn't buy it. He doesn't know where to buy that. Someone else wanted us gone, I said. Someone with money and patience. Someone who thought silence would be neat. He looked at me, eyes wet and older. I taught him to hide. I did that, he said. We both did, I said. But someone else taught him to be dangerous. I am done being quiet. He nodded slow. Then we keep going. I slipped the silver button back into my pocket, next to a new weight, the small flash drive with moving pictures of cars and time. I was not sure yet whether I was building a shield or a blade. I only knew this. Our son had not stood alone at that cliff. And the echo we heard in the wind did not belong to family. It belonged to business. I waited until the house was quiet enough to hear the clock tick. My son sat at the dining table, scrolling on his phone like he had not stood at the edge of a cliff days earlier. The silver button burned in my pocket. My husband lingered in the hallway, not stopping me but not stepping forward either. I took a breath and crossed the room. Why? I asked. My voice was too calm, too flat. Why did you take us there? He looked up slowly, eyebrows arched in that casual mask he wore when he wanted to seem innocent. What are you talking about, Mom? You fell. I told the police. Loose gravel. You're lucky to be alive. We're all lucky. His tone was syrup, too sweet. I placed the button on the table between us. His eyes flicked to it, then back to me, his jaw tightening just a fraction. You left this behind, I said. A shadow crossed his face, but the mask returned fast. That's not mine. How would you even— Don't lie to me. My voice cracked. You gripped me. I felt it. And I saw the car. The SUV. You weren't alone. Who was there with you? He leaned back in his chair, exhaling like I was a child throwing a tantrum. You really think you're detectives now? You and Dad should be thanking me. If I hadn't been there, you'd still be lying at the bottom. But no, you want to ruin me. You've always wanted to ruin me. My husband stepped in then, hands raised, voice soft. Son, no one wants to ruin you. We just need the truth. The truth? My son's laugh was sharp, empty. The truth is you've been against me since the beginning. You had money, Mom, but never trusted me with it. You gave me crumbs while you sat on a nest egg. You call it protection, I call it control. And you, Dad, always threatening to go to the cops. To teach me a lesson. You're not protecting me. You're protecting yourselves. He stood, his chair scraping the floor, and the mask slipped entirely. His face twisted, red blotches rising on his neck. Do you know what it's like to owe men who don't wait? To be laughed at in front of people who matter? To watch everyone else drive cars, hold jobs, own things while I get lectures? You think I pushed you for fun? You think I wanted to? No, I wanted silence. Just a little silence so I could breathe without you watching, without you threatening. My chest tightened. You tried to kill us for money? For your shame? For my life? He snapped. For the only chance I had left. You don't know what it feels like to be owned. To wake up every day knowing one wrong move gets you buried. And instead of helping, you two, my own parents, chose to stand in the way. He realized too late how loud he was. The window was cracked open. Across the hedge, Mrs. Calloway's porch light flicked on. A shadow moved behind her curtains. The room froze, silence pressing on all three of us. Then came the knock at the door. Hard, fast, official. My husband opened it, and 2 officers stepped in, hands resting on belts. We had a call about shouting. Is everything all right? My son's face changed again. Remorse painted over rage in seconds. His eyes went wide, wet. I'm sorry, he whispered, looking at the officers. We've just been under stress. I never meant to shout. I love my parents. We've been struggling. The officers looked from him to me, my lips parted, ready to spill every word, every bruise, every truth. But before I could, my husband's voice cut in. Calm, firm, practiced. It's fine. We had an accident last week, and the tension's been high. But it's family business. Nothing more. One officer nodded, satisfied enough. The other looked less convinced, but followed protocol. Sir, we'll need you to come down for a statement, he told my son. They cuffed him lightly, led him out to the car. My son turned his head as he passed me, a flash of fury glinting in his eyes where the remorse had just been. At the station, he was held only a few hours. By morning, he was back home, free. The report said, domestic dispute, no evidence of crime. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the silver button, the photos, the drive with the SUV footage. None of it mattered if my husband kept smoothing it over, covering, excusing. I turned to him, the man who had whispered, "Pretend we're dead." "You let him walk," I said, my voice low. "You gave him back the freedom to do it again." My husband's face was pale. "He's our son." "No," I said. "He's your secret. And your secret just tried to bury us." The weight of complicity pressed down harder than the fall ever had. I realized then that the cliff was not behind us. It was right here, inside these walls. And my husband had already chosen which side to stand on. The proof came not in thunder, but in a small vibration on my phone. A message forwarded from an unknown number. "You didn't see anything. You fell. Remember that." Attached was a grainy frame from the gas station camera, cropped. It showed my son standing near the black SUV, hand raised, the silver-buttoned jacket clear. The timestamp in the corner matched the minute before our fall. I sat at the kitchen table, phone in one hand, the family photo album in the other. On the page, my son at 6 years old grinned with frosting on his chin. On the screen, his grown face blurred by shadow, too close to men who use silence like rope. Both images were true, and both tore me in half. I could take this to Detective Hale. I could go to the press. The headline would be a storm. Local heir linked to attempted murder of parents. It would end his life as he knew it. But if I buried it, if I tucked the photo away in some locked drawer, we might keep our home, our quiet dinners, our family name. Except I already knew we hadn't had family in years, only fragments held together by fear. I closed the album and walked through the house. Each room held echoes, a drawing taped to the fridge, his voice calling from the stairs, the dent in the wall where a ball had once hit. My husband found me in the hallway, his hand on my arm. "Don't," he said, reading my thoughts. "Don't take it public. We can still fix this," but I shook my head. "We already pretended once. We said we were dead. I won't pretend again." That night I planned. Not the police, not yet. Too easy for reports to vanish. Not the press alone. They liked headlines more than truth. Instead, the town meeting, a fundraiser at the Civic Hall, with the developer himself on stage. Everyone important would be there. Neighbors, officials, donors. I would stand up. I would play the footage. I would force them to choose. Turn away from us or from the truth. I rehearsed in whispers, my hand trembling over the small drive. I imagined the gasp of the crowd, the way silence would break wide open. But silence came first, in a darker form. On the morning I set out for the hall, a car idled at the end of our street, windows black. I ignored it, walking faster. At the corner, footsteps fell in behind me. A voice hissed low, "Turn around and go home." I didn't. The grip came sharp on my elbow, hard enough to pull me back. I twisted, heart thundering. It wasn't my son. It was the girl. The one with smoke eyes from the gala. His partner in nights I never understood. Up close, her face was drawn tight, lips pale. "You don't get it," she said. "They'll take him down, but they'll take you with him. You think this is about your son? You're just leverage. Collateral. Stop digging or you won't get a third chance to fall." She shoved me toward the curb. My knees hit concrete, pain ripping through me. A horn blared as a car swerved past, inches from my shoulder. By the time I scrambled up, she was gone, swallowed by the waiting SUV. I staggered home, breath ragged, palms bleeding. My husband rushed to me, but I pulled away. "It's not just him," I said. "It's bigger. And now they've tried again." He wanted to lock the doors, close the curtains, whisper safety. But my mind was already at the hall, already picturing the drive plugged in, the image on the screen, the gasp in the crowd. The choice was made. I would not bury the truth. If the cliff had taught me anything, it was that silence is its own kind of death. The Civic Hall smelled of polished wood and nervous sweat, rows of chairs filled with neighbors, council members, donors. At the front, the developer shook hands, flashing his gold smile, ready to speak about growth and future. I sat near the middle, palms slick, the small flash drive heavy in my pocket. My heart pounded like a second pulse. When the speeches began, I waited. My husband sat beside me, stiff, eyes darting between me and the stage. "Don't do this," he whispered, voice like gravel. But I stood anyway. My voice broke into the hall, sharper than the microphone. "I need everyone to see something." The room shifted, people turning, murmuring. I walked to the projector with steps that felt like crossing a cliff edge again. My fingers shook as I slid the drive into the laptop. The screen filled with grainy footage. My son beside the black SUV, jacket buttons glinting, timestamp flashing. Gasps scattered across the hall. Then the still of the carabiner, the fingerprint match highlighted. And last, the text message. "If you report, they will make it look like you fell." The silence was thick, broken by a sharp intake of breath from Mrs. Calloway. Then voices rose, layered, questions, denials, curses. "That's your boy?" someone shouted. "God help you," another hissed, like father, like son, covering up filth. My son stood at the back, frozen for one heartbeat before his mask returned. He pushed forward, hands raised. "This is a lie." His voice cracked. "It's edited. My own mother wants to destroy me. You all know me. You've seen me at fundraisers, helping out, showing up." But his allies turned their faces away. The developer stepped back, palms lifted as if washing his hands. "We don't involve ourselves with private disputes," he said smoothly, already cutting the tie. I turned then, facing the hall. We didn't fall by accident. We were silenced, and I won't be silent anymore. My throat shook, but my voice carried. My husband's face went pale. A councilwoman called out, "And didn't you once hide his trouble? The car crash, the complaint?" The words spread fast, whispers catching like brush fire. Heads turned toward him. He swallowed, shoulders sinking. "I thought I was protecting him," he admitted, voice small. "I thought I was buying him time. The betrayal cut me twice, once from my son, once from the man who shared my bed." The hall roared, neighbors spitting words like shame, cowards, danger. A woman with a child at her side hissed, "Keep him away from mine." My son's mask shattered. He lunged toward the stage, pointing at me. "You think you're a saint? You hoarded money while I begged. You let him threaten me with cops. You were never on my side, never." His voice cracked, spit flying, rage unchained. Security pulled him back, his body jerking, shouts spilling into the hall. "You'll regret this. You'll see what silence really means." The community's faces closed against him, hard lines of disgust. The weight of ostracism fell heavier than iron bars. Even the girl with smoke eyes stepped back, arms folded, refusing to meet his gaze. The meeting dissolved into chaos. People filed out, muttering. Reporters scribbled. Phones buzzed with recordings already spreading beyond these walls. My husband slumped into a chair, staring at nothing. My son shoved free of security, storming out into the night. I followed, but only as far as the doorway. The air outside was sharp, the sky fading to gray. He stood across the street, chest heaving, eyes wild. For one moment, he looked like the boy who once cried when his kite tore. Then he turned, shoulders squared, and walked away into the dark. I stayed on the steps, watching until the sound of his footsteps disappeared. Behind him, the street sloped toward the horizon, toward the line of trees that hid the cliff. It loomed in my mind, the drop, the wind, the silence, the place where family had broken and where truth had clawed its way out. I stood alone, the echo of the cliff still inside me, knowing the next step would not be backward, but forward. The weeks that followed were heavy with headlines. His name appeared on screens, in papers, whispered at grocery aisles. Attempted homicide, conspiracy, fraud. The developer denied everything, as men with gold smiles do. But my son could not deny the prints, the footage, the text. Even then, his lawyers called it manipulation, a trick of light and desperation. At the hearings, I sat on the hard benches with hands folded in my lap. My husband sat 2 seats away, his tie loose, his eyes refusing mine. When asked to testify, I spoke steady. I told them about the push, the whisper, the silence demanded. I showed them the button, the message, the carabiner. My son stared at me from across the room, expression blank, jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. Neighbors came too. Mrs. Calloway with her bird log, the gas station clerk, even the nurse who had noted bruises without comment. One by one, they added their small stones of truth until the pile could not be ignored. The judge ruled for trial, but trials move slowly, like rivers thick with silt. In the meantime, social exile came swifter than law. Invitations dried up, doors closed, old friends crossed streets. His allies left him stranded, and he walked town like a ghost wearing my face. Shame became his shadow, louder than any verdict. At home, I made choices. My husband tried to explain again, voice worn, words trembling. I thought I was saving him, he whispered. I thought love meant covering, protecting, keeping the world from knowing. Love is truth, I said, and truth hurts, but silence kills. He bowed his head. Whether redemption would come for him, I did not know. But I could not let comfort chain me to complicity. I told him we needed distance. Not forever, perhaps, but enough to breathe air that wasn't heavy with secrets. He left with one suitcase, shoulders bent. Healing was quieter than I imagined. It came in dirt under my fingernails as I planted bulbs in the garden. In mornings when I walked without checking over my shoulder. In afternoons where I read aloud at a support group for families betrayed by their own blood. Voices trembling together but standing. Some nights I still woke to the whisper, "Pretend we're dead." But I answered it with breath, steady and alive. One clear evening I returned to the cliff. The air was sharp with pine, the rocks warm from sun. I stood at the edge, not to fall but to face it. In my hand, the silver button caught the last light, its ridges worn smooth by my worry. I opened my palm and let the wind take it. It spun once, twice, then vanished into the air, swallowed by the place that had almost swallowed us. I did not cry. I did not smile. I simply stood, feet firm, heart steady, the horizon wide and open. I had not chosen revenge. I had chosen truth, and truth, though cruel, had carried me here.